Thank you very much for going to spend this next 30, 40 minutes with us. Is I'm going to talk through a very topical uh, area, storytelling. I think we've been hearing about it, perhaps you could say it's a buzzword within the industry, and we've been hearing about it a lot over the past several years. And of course, another very topical area is video. We're very much in the era of video. And so how do we bring these two to make insight impact? So what I'm going to cover today is just talking about storytelling and research reports, and what storytelling really means within the context of research reports, how video plays into this, and then I'm going to close with 5 tips for using videos as part of your insights presentation. Now, as Elisa said, please do put questions in the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on them as I'm going through, but I'll definitely have some time for questions at the end, and really look forward to having a conversation with you. So I think we have all been there. I know I've certainly been there. When you have poured your heart and soul into a research report, any kind of study of sorts, and you feel that you've done stellar work, and yet it has gone nowhere. Well, look, I know I certainly have, and I have an example that I can, when I always think about this, and it springs to mind, and I'm talking something that's a good 5, 6 years ago, where I was tasked by the executive team of a previous company to pull together sort of not just sort of the problem around a particular area that we were looking to innovate within, but also recommendations. And I really set my heart and soul to this. And I probably spent a good 6 weeks, not consecutively, every day, but, I spent my time doing desk research, speaking to different stakeholders within the company, basically basically do everything I can to build a comprehensive story and narrative, and succinctly put forward, as I thought, the problems, the challenges, and therefore the solutions. Except when I sent off this report, it really did go into the cyber abyss, and I heard crickets. There was just absolutely nothing. And eventually, a good number of weeks after that, I got the opportunity to speak to some senior leaders. We had a 30-minute phone call, and then absolutely nothing happened thereafter. Fast forward a year, and I pulled up this report again and printed it out and put it on somebody's desk. And as they looked through it all, they were kind of like, and why did this go nowhere? Because what they were seeing, in with a different lens, a year later, they were seeing that there were some very valuable things in there. So what was going on there? Why didn't that come through? And there's a number of different things. In today's world, everything competes for our attention, not least those at the executive, the senior level. There's reports, tweets, phone calls, meetings, news alerts, intranet, data files, email. We all love that one. There's a Harvard Business Review article that talks about the information floodgates that open and content rushes at us in countless formats. And this is something that really we have within not just our personal lives, but certainly our business lives. And insights reports are just another piece of information within the information floodgates. And so after the findings have been delivered, whether by email, phone call, or in-person presentation, it's not uncommon, as it was in my case, for the report to be relegated to the vault, never to be revisited again. Now, of course, this does not happen all the time by any shape or form. Some things really do resonate well, some things do okay, and the call to action is responded to, but others aren't so lucky. And we can ask, well, what's gone wrong? And I think there's a number, and clearly there's a number of different elements in play. But we can say that oftentimes the story's missing. Now, again, I've said, storytelling, this is a buzzword that we've been hearing a lot about. And it's made me really think, well, what is storytelling in the context of research reports? And I certainly did a lot of reading around this. I did everything from film and writing novels. And I was like, how is this applying to research reports, to insights reports? And then I wondered, is it the key findings condensed into a narrative structure, a cohesive narrative? Is it the structure, how things are put together, having that beginning, middle, and end? Is it the visual representation of the data visualization? Does it come down to the presenter? The presenter's delivery of the results. And I'd suggest that really all of these elements are important. They all play together. And I think there's something more as well. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Dr. Brene Brown, and she said back in her 2010 TED Talk that stories are just data with a soul. And I know I've used this quote before, and others have as well, but I think it's key. I think she's onto something really important here. Research storytelling connects the audience to the data. It humanizes the numbers or the themes, enabling the findings to resonate and in turn become memorable. So storytelling is really an effective way to connect stakeholders with the issues and the possible solutions. And if I just return quickly to my I returned quickly to my example where I had that report that didn't go anywhere. I think that's exactly what I failed to do. I failed to connect the stakeholders with the issues and the possible solutions in sort of a memorable way, in a way that it resonated at that time, and they felt they could take action on it. Now, another quote that I really like, this was published in the Fast Company a few years back, is that stories are the heartbeat of powerful presentations. They capture the imagination, they engage the emotions and break through the mundane. They're memorable, they connect, and yes, stories even sell. And I think that's important. That's sort of another way, and maybe just kind of elaborating on Brene Brown's stories are just data with a soul. You know, it's capturing your imagination. It's going somewhere. So yeah, so I think that this is where I got to in terms of thinking about what storytelling mean in the context of research reports. Now, when we think about it, we live in a world of big data. You know, certainly if you think of marketing departments and the amount of clickstream and click and or point of sale or CRM data that's used on a regular basis. And what's interesting there is that, you know, this data is fantastic and it's incredibly valuable. The thing with big data is it isn't enough. It isn't enough all the time to capture that imagination, engage the emotions, to break through, particularly when you are just breaking. And to be honest, this isn't just for big data. If you're presenting numerous amounts of survey data and you're just presenting one chart after the other, that isn't capturing the imagination and engaging those emotions, and so therefore not leading to that breakthrough. This is where this idea of small data, this is something Martin Lindstrom's talked about, it's also known as thick data, really comes in. And it's about humanizing the numbers and the themes. Again, even if you're using qualitative data and you've got a number of themes and you can just talk about this is what we found, is it really being humanized? Is it really coming to life? Is it just creating something that's sticky? To go back to the title of the webinar, how do you make something sticky so that it becomes memorable? So just a way to illustrate, you know, different types of data that can be used and different ways that it tells the story. I love this example of the Dust Bowl. Before coming to the US, I actually had never heard of the Dust Bowl, and for those of you who don't know, it was a phenomenon. It was a period of time. It was a decade in the US in the 1930s that lasted the full decade. That was basically a perfect storm of over farming, so agricultural issues, a period of prolonged drought, and those things, and then high winds, and all of those coming together. That basically it created these massive, mind-blowing dust storms. And what that caused, it completely ruined a booming agricultural area and led people to pack up and move. And so what you see here on this map is actually the migrants that left that kind of central area. So you sort of have Arkansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, all of that kind of area. Some of them moved east towards sort of Boston and New York area, but you can see the bulk of people moved west, Southern California and some to Northern California. So, wow, this phenomenon was so big that it caused over 200,000 families, people, to move in the 1930s. And of course, in terms of population, that was massive back then. Over 200,000 people just left their homes. So you think, wow, that must have been something. So what if I bring it to life a little bit more and I show you this image? Now, this was taken in a small town called Larkin, And it's actually an image of three school pupils. And this is what they had to do in order to walk to school. They had to put in homemade gas masks and goggles in order to protect themselves from the dust. And when you look at that image, you can see, how not just, how they're having to be dressed, and it doesn't actually look that comfortable walking around with those cloths over their face and the goggles and so on. But look at the background. Look how barren and dusty that is. And so that starts to give you a sense of, yeah, I can start to see why so many people would up sticks and move. And of course, they didn't have their livelihood either. And it was very tough conditions. Now, when I've talked through this before, it's like, imagine the power of video to bring that to life. Because, that image, I think, and I still find incredibly powerful. But what if we had some video? And, well, I actually have some video. And if you bear with me, I'll just play about just under a minute of this clip so that you can get a sense of what it actually looked like in those conditions.
I shall never forget the fields of wheat, so blasted by heat that they cannot be harvested. I shall never forget field after field of corn, stunted, earless, strips of leaves, for what the sun left, the grasshoppers took. I saw brown pasture that would not keep a cow on 50 acres. Yet I would not have you think for a single minute that there is permanent disaster in these drought regions, or that the picture I saw meant depopulating these areas.
So there's just a short clip, and I hope you got a sense of, there was obviously the FDR speaking and really talking about this national crisis. And there was very dramatic music over there. But you get a sense of, people just digging out dust. The ground was nothing more than, you wouldn't even call it mud. It was a dusty fine, harsh and fine soil, although nothing could grow on it, drought-ridden, no moisture, and how tough it would have been to live in that environment, and how great a disaster, a catastrophe it was for that region, and for the US as a whole in that area. And for me, this really demonstrates and depicts the power of video, because it brings to life in a way of actually seeing people. These people lived through that, and look what conditions they had to live in. And that really brings to life their plight. And as I say, the power of video. So what can video do for us? Well, it's easy to digest. That was just less than a minute clip that I played, and you could get a sense of what was going on there, and it can really help capture that imagination. It can create that empathetic connection, with the people in there. It makes them human. It humanizes them and helps engage your emotions. And because it's so authentic, and this is something that I'm going to talk about more when we're talking about research video. That there's a truth there. I'm not making this up. When you talk about, if I talk about the Dust Bowl again, it's hard to kind of envisage how tough those conditions were. But when you are seeing the video, and I'm also talking with context, I've watched, there's an NPR documentary, or PBS, sorry, there's a documentary on the Dust Bowl. It's worth a watch, because it's incredibly powerful, just getting a glimpse of people's lives and actually seeing how tough it is. And you have that authenticity. This isn't just being played up. And so it really helps break through. And in just, for example, the Dust Bowl's case, helped me understand what a massive, on unthinkable terms, a natural catastrophe this was during that time. So all of those things are things the video can do. And of course, it's cognitively easy to digest. There's a study done within Harvard that actually showed that we can process a single image in 13 milliseconds. 13 milliseconds, one image. So imagine the amount of info that we can take in from a video. Again, so it's a way of giving us a lot of information in a short period of time that we are able to process. Now, turning our attention to research and presenting insights, to go to this idea and talking about how powerful video is, most presentations you're forced to to bring to life the voice of the customer through text and pictures, which we know, and pictures can be incredibly and are incredibly valuable. But with video, this new approach video, you can bring the customer into the room with you to tell the story. And that's something incredible. You're not having to do that kind of convincing. It's going back to that authenticity piece as well. And so our client Sam was really struck by the impact that video had during that presentation. And those clips that they'd used in this particular project that we did with them were so successful at telling the story, they were actually streamed in a different place within the campus. Because let's not forget, all of us, no matter what business that we're in, we're all here to work for our clients, for our customers. We want to do well. And to do that, we need to understand them. And so bringing them to life through video is a very powerful way of doing that. So how as we as researchers can use videos to deliver insights that stick? Well, there's a proliferation of research video. And I think video is a big part of all the data that we collect. Everything from, think of a traditional focus group video, online communities, your online qualitative research, mobile ethnographies, webcam interviews, and of course, video open-ends within a survey. All of these places are a way to collect video that's incredibly rich. And one other thing I'd say is you can also supplement with other types of videos I did just a few slides ago. So there's lots of different ways that we can bring video in. And of course, I think the most powerful ones is when you are using video from the research, from the people that you've spoken to bring a topic, a theme, an idea to life. So how can you bring this into your presentation? What are the kind of considerations that you need to think about when using video within your insights presentations? And again, this is something I've thought quite a lot about. It's not comprehensive, and it's not, I'm sure it's not complete, and I would love to hear your suggestions and in your experiences, what's worked. But here's 5 things that I've thought about and feel that's quite important. So the first things we know with video is that it is incredibly cumbersome. You get a lot of data. Even with short videos, even with video open ends, if you're collecting and you get 100 of them, even if the clips are only a minute each, that's still 100 minutes, where just to watch them through once, you're spending that amount of time. Never mind to start to think, okay, so what kind of themes have I got? Which ones work? Which ones don't? So it can take time to do it, and I know that can be a deterrent. Never mind when you're talking about, 10, 20 hours of focus video. So the thing is, and I think this is what is exciting and where we are, is that we have research technology that can help us manage that data. Obviously security, and I'm going to say, and I'm definitely not shying away from this, because the thing with video is we've got to particularly think about data security, privacy. For our European colleagues, this is for GDPR. There's some very important compliance elements here, and for all of us, even if we don't have the legal compliance, we have our ethical responsibilities as researchers to make sure that we're hosting and using this data in an appropriate manner, and one that we've got consent from the participants with. And I think this is what I really and truly believe, is that this is where video management, research video management capabilities, such as what we've got here at Focus Vision with Video Insights, this helps managing the data easier, much more. You're keeping to your compliance, your data security and privacy. But beyond that, that's incredibly important. And beyond that, we have the ability to analyze it, to get closer to it more quickly. And that's what we have here. You bring it in, you can have automated transcription capabilities, the abilities to analyze, to search, to tag, to edit, to quickly pull together playlists, and then refine. This is a bit of an iterative process, and then create your report. Once you have your video and you've got a sense of the types of video that you would, and the clips that you may want to use within a presentation that could just be powerful moments to bring to life a key finding, a theme, or whatnot, you need to think about your structure. What is your structure of your presentation overall, actually? And at a minimum, we have this classic 3-act, where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But of course, there's many ways that you can take a story. But you can't go wrong with just thinking about this as your basic structure, and that's of your presentation overall. So then you've got to think about, well, where does video sit within this structure. Are you going to be, using it as part of the opening act? You could just kick off with a video. Maybe there was a, sort of a clip or two that was just so powerful that summed up what was going on. And you might find that it just sets the scene in a way. You've got people right away. You've got that sticky moment, and you'll take them with them. Is it an end summary? People have been through, they've got all the detail they need, and you just want to leave them with, don't forget these key points. Here is, a clip from each of our our findings, our insights, and the relevant associated implications or recommendations. So this is a part of an end summary. Is it a mid-proof point? That was something that I did here. It's like, I want to show about the power of video, so let me use this as a proof point. And of course, it could be used sort of interspersed throughout. And maybe we'll get to the stage where actually it could be your entire presentation. You show that couple of minutes clips, and there you go. People have what they need in order to move on. That's certainly something that I've seen with, there was some sort of packaging, user testing, and sort of the findings it showed, and through some surveys and whatnot, it showed that people were having some challenges with this packaging. But it was actually only when there was some video showing people actually struggling with the packaging and where they were struggling that that brought that to life. And actually, that was all that was really needed to kind of show the product developers, the package developers, what they needed to do to go and make some changes. And it was also a proof point. We're not just hearing from a few people that aren't getting it. Look, this is it here. So it might just be enough to have a video as your presentation. So ways to think about, lots of different placement and areas, and how you're going to use video. Of course, then there is a balance that needs to be going on. You've got to balance length. How long is this video? Just taking a look at this Vistia information here, and they were showing that actually in terms of engagement, you get people's attention, full attention, 70%. You get people's attention for 2 minutes, and after that point, it actually starts to drop off. Up to 7 minutes, and then it kind of plateaus. So you really got to think of anything over 2 minutes. You've got to be thinking, how am I keeping them engaged? What am I looking to get? Am I getting those key points? And so that might be something for you to think of. Do I need one longer video? Is it at that kind of 2 minute mark? And again, this is just rules of thumbs. Depending on the content you got, depending how you're putting these clips together, or whatever you're doing, it really just depends. But do think about, is this one longer video? Or does it make sense to make it a number of shorter videos? What's going to do the most to capture my audience attention, to really get that sticky moment? And also, you've got to think about other areas of so length, your engagement, and then purpose. That goes with it as well. Is it to show your proof points? Is it summation? Is it framing the problem? Is it a leave behind? Is this something that you've gone through in the detail that needs to be gone through? Where things are at, and what the findings and the implications and recommendations are. And maybe you want to have it as a leave behind, like, remember, this is something you can take away to your teams. So again, video, there's so many different ways that it can be used. This brings me to the final tip, and this is incredibly important, and just building on that last point on, is it a leave behind? Is it something that you say, hey, take this away, watch it again, maybe share it with your teams? Because you do have to think about, is it intended to be shareable? And if it is, then of course there's a number of considerations. So permissions. So really, again, going back and thinking about privacy, security, and any kind of legal obligations and compliance on the region that you're in. Do you have the relevant permissions for this video, if it's of your research participants, to be shared in this way? So really think about that. Also then think about, is the video self-explanatory? If it was just taken out of context and there's somebody just playing that 30-second or 2 minute video clip, can it stand alone? Does it do what it needs to do when it's on its own? And if not, then you might want to be rethinking your kind of strategy there. Like, maybe I need to add some subtitles that does provide context, that can lead people to another area, that can just help guide them through what you're wanting them to see. So it is thinking about If something's going to be standalone, and of course we can't necessarily always control this, is it going to be self-explanatory? And then accessible, that also needs to think about, how are they going to access it? And I see this very much being linked to the kind of the permissions. And I'm also going to go back to why I do believe as a researcher that using video management and storage platforms is a great way to be able to make sure that you can share this video with the right permissions, that you know where it's being stored, and you're making it accessible to people without different files going all over the organization. So think about accessible, where they're going to find it, how do they get into it, how do they access the video, so that they can make the most use of it. And so with that, I would say, video, I think the ability to see faces, hear voices, understand emotions, create and obtain rich contextual data, seeing people in their environments, seeing them in their house when sitting in their living room, and you really get a better understanding of who people are. I think it creates a real connection that can deliver a very powerful impact within the research story. And that I think it's a very powerful way to create those breakthrough moments. But of course, what I've talked about is that, there are different considerations when you are using video, and think about those, and think about all the, from how you're presenting it, standalone, not standalone. Obviously think about your security, did you get those permissions, and so on. But when you've thought about all those things, it can create that breakthrough moment. And so just to wrap up, before we get to any questions that might be there, and again, please do put in the question and answer box, and I'll be looking through those shortly. But just to wrap up, my view on what research storytelling is, and again, I'd love to hear what yours is, but I really think it's about connecting your audience with the data. It is taking that Brene Brown, storytelling is just maybe data with a soul. It's about creating those memorable moments. It's about bringing it to life. It's about selling your story. So that's what we're trying to do here. And video is a very powerful way to bring it to life. And you can do so really quickly. And we're all time strapped. We've all got so many things competing for our attention. And video can be that way that just brings it to life, and it's sticky and it's engaging and all of those good things. And then, as I just concluded with, video needs to be used thoughtfully to create those findings. And there are different considerations that need to come into play. And I gave you my 5 tips on what to think about. Again, would love to hear yours. So with that, we're going to be handing over to questions.
Great. So it looks like we have a question about getting a release to use video. Can you talk through some of those regulations that are in place?
Sure, absolutely. So incredibly important. Think about this for any research that you do, particularly when you're collecting PII, personally identifiable information, when you're collecting anything that's personal for them, you should be letting people know, what's the purpose of the research, how their video is going to be used. So for example, when I do collect video, oftentimes I might be doing so because I want to use it. I believe it's a very important and powerful way to illustrate the point, and I might be doing that at a conference presentation. I make sure people know that that's the environment that it's going to be used in. And I will say that that's also why I didn't include any research video in this, because that was not, the video that I have is not being permissions for being broadcast on the web. So, think about the context, make sure that you're getting permissions, and just, I think being upfront with people is, and they know how their data is being used, and there is a willingness. Some people will say no, but on the most hand, I found that people are willing to do it and to provide it.
Thank you. Our next question is, how many videos do you typically include in a report, and how much time do you spend on the video portion of the report?
I think that's a great question, and the answer, which I hope isn't too wishy-washy, but it just depends. And because it depends, what kind of videos do you have? Like what do you think is going to best show and illustrate and your finding and provide impact on it? I would caution away from just putting it in left, right, and center. You're not looking to do something and just have it in there for the sake of having it. Like anything, like any slide that's in your presentation deck, it's there for a purpose. It's there for a reason. So I'd really think about, does this make sense? And you know what? It could make sense that if you've got 20 implications or 20 findings, that you've got 20 video clips, because each of them brings to life that particular finding. Because if it's important enough to talk about it, then it might be important enough to have the clip. So it really just depends on what kind of video you've captured, what you think is powerful, what are you trying to communicate to your stakeholders at the end of the day about what's important about the findings from this piece of research. So not a specific answer, but I hope that helps.
The next two questions kind of weave together, so I'm going to try to piece them together. One person saying he's trying to work in more video into reports, but it's struggling a bit to understand how video differs in its usage compared to just a quote. Do you find yourself using video a lot more differently than a quote? Would you say video is a more impactful quote? And do you have recommendations on how to weave everything together?
Okay. Yeah, a lot there. Do you know, I think there is an aspect of it's more impactful. Like, it just captures people. You've got their attention. It brings them to life. Sometimes when it's just a quote and text on a page, you're not hearing any emotion associated with it. You're not, or lack of emotion, because that can be very telling as well. You're not getting any facial expressions. You're not getting, also I talked about the context, the environment that they're in. That may or may not be important, but all of this provides additional cues beyond just what they're saying. And as humans, we respond to seeing other people, and it makes them real. It brings it to life. So there's definitely an element of impact and making it much more powerful than just simply having that text.
Thank you. Can you share more about the video analysis tools and how they work?
Sure. So, well, I can. There are tools out there. I'm going to talk about Focus Vision Video Insights. That so it works in a number of different ways, or you can use it in a number of different ways. First and foremost, or I don't know if it's first and foremost, because I think all of the areas are important. But it's about managing your video data. Where do I store this? How do I make sure it's stored securely and make sure that nobody else is accessing it? People aren't storing on their hard drives, because that's not a secure way of storing your video data. So what this allows is a secure way of doing it. It also allows it to be searchable, taggable. So within Video Insights, we have a number of different features. So you can use machine or human transcription, and through that you can search, and so you can pull out keywords, you can tag video, you can bring in, so I'm just going to use an example of video openings, you can bring in certain, and the same, I'm just using this example, you can do it from your qualitative data as well. For example, from Focus Vision Revelation, where you've got video clips from particular people, so you can bring in that participant information, so age, gender, if there's a segment they're associated to, and so on, and you can then search by those, or isolate by, I just want to look at what women said, women's responses, or this particular segment's responses. And so what I find that allows is a quicker way to get closer to your data, because you want to look at your data in a number of different ways. And so if you can quickly sort and filter out and have a look at, okay, so what are these people saying, or what is this group of people saying, then I find that incredibly helpful. It also helps you with the abilities to write notes. And again, so it's digitizing what you might have done, on paper, thinking about, okay, so I want a note associated with that video clip, that's a potential for my presentation, just an example. Or, hey, that's an interesting theme. I wonder if I'm going to see that anywhere, so I'm going to note that just to make sure that I come back to it. So again, it's just allowing you different ways to analyze your data and speeding things up a bit. And then what you can also do is, once you're ready, you say, hey, I've got my overarching findings, and I want to pull together these 3 or 4 clips into a playlist, as you like, into one, stitch them together into one video. You can also add subtitles, so that you can kind of show, you're giving some textual reference to what you're seeing. and then you stitch it together so it can be one seamless video that you can incorporate in your presentation. The last thing I'll talk about with video insights, and we are going to be talking about more video insights in the coming months, so watch out for this, and we've got some exciting innovations coming if I'm previewing it. But there's also the ability to share out, to have a cloud-based sort of top-line report. So say you're in the middle of a presentation, middle of field work, and you want to give the Friday afternoon, this is a quick summary of what we found this week. You can create some really quick clips. You can add in some text, you can add in some context, and you can share out sort of this cloud-based sort of highlight of what's going on. And again, that's a way for people to see the video without having to download anything. It's a great way of maintaining securities and who's having access to the clips, but also allowing them access to what's going on and seeing for themselves. And I think this whole idea of seeing for themselves is the power of video. Bring people, get people, close, get stakeholders close enough to really understand how people are thinking, feeling, and acting. So I hope that was a good summary. We'd be glad to talk about that, give more information about video insights and what you can do with it.
That leads into another question. Do you show raw videos of the participants, or do you doctor the scenes?
I would say show raw. Again, this all assuming you have the correct permissions in order to show people. But the authenticity factor of it is that it isn't doctored. This is my perspective. Again, I'm not really knowing the context on how you're asking that. There may well be reasons for doctoring. Maybe it's clipping. Maybe it's just creating. I just want that snippet. But I am a big believer in authenticity, and that's what's resonating with bringing this to life for your stakeholders, for the people that weren't immersed in this research in the way that you were. I think it does a great way of just showing it to them, and they're seeing for themselves.
Have you ever played video as your room was filling as a teaser of what was to come? If so, what was the reaction?
Love it. I have not. And the thing is with video is I would like to explore it more myself. I think that there's so much that we can do with video, and we could get creative in the way that we're thinking about using it. And it again, I think that's where I was thinking about. Maybe it was the second or third tip that I came with. Is it the opening act? Is it the closing scene? Is it something you're leaving people with? And yes, it could be done in that way of, as people are filtering in. Are you just kind of, do you have a scene on loop, and you might start to, it's a teaser to get people interested in what's coming. I think that's a really interesting idea. Love it. I haven't tried it. Yeah, maybe I'll give it a go and see how I get on. But if anybody out there has done it, I would love to hear how they've got on, and any tips that they would have for making that effective.
All right, I have a couple of questions about more about releases. For example, if you're going into a store and you're recording someone, do you need to get the store's permission? Do you need to get their permission to shoot the video? And does the participant sign a standard video release? Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, so in stores is challenging. It depends how you're thinking about doing it. Are you doing something formal with like a shop along, with what kind of camera are you using, how you're doing it? I think that there's a lot of contextual areas there that you need to think about. And this might be something that I'd be happy to talk to directly in terms of what you're thinking. Always thinking about going back to that question around participants signing a standard video release. Yes, I mean, a research participant generally asks, you're gonna let them know about the research, and whether you're letting them know who the actual stakeholder, that the if it's the end client, if you're doing it on behalf of someone, that may or may not be disclosed, but you're always letting them know what this research is about, how their data is going to be used, and just getting informed consent, and that's a big piece for it.
Thank you. Zoe, we're going to wrap up our time today. If for anyone listening, if there were more questions that didn't get answered, we'll follow up soon. you can email us at webinars@focusvision.com. We'll respond to your question at the time. Thank you again, Zoe. We had some comments talking about how you were the epitome of authenticity, and we hope everyone else enjoyed the webinar. We hope to see you in the future. Thank you.